Waco, Texas, we have been watching as they have sent vehicles in to ram
Washington
holes
to
in the compound and one second.
A charismatic leader with the power to manipulate his followers. A religious group preparing for the apocalypse. And a standoff with the government that would end in tragedy. Did the Branch Davidians set fire to themselves? And why did the FBI blast loud music during the standoff? To understand, we have to take a journey back in time to where it all began. This is The Battle of Waco. Chapter 1. Unmasking David Koresh and the Branch Davidians. David Koresh, originally named Vernon Wayne Howell, was a troubled individual who found refuge in religion. Raised by a single mother in a chaotic household, he struggled with learning difficulties and experienced frequent bullying. Despite these obstacles, Koresh had a strong interest in the Bible, and in his late teens, he joined the Branch Davidians at their Mount Carmel Center near Waco, Texas. Prior to joining the religious group, Koresh aspired to be a rock star. He was a skilled musician and played in a rock band called Damascus Road. In the mid-1980s, Koresh and his fellow band members attempted to achieve success in Los Angeles. However, they encountered hardships and failed to find their footing in the competitive music scene. Disappointed and financially burdened, Koresh returned back to Texas. Back in his home state, Koresh felt a renewed dedication to exploring his religious beliefs. This led him to joining the Branch Davidians, a sect with ties to the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Koresh quickly gained prominence within the community due to his charisma and claimed ability to interpret complex biblical prophecies. In 1987, he officially assumed leadership of the Branch Davidians after a power struggle with the previous leader, George Roden. As the group's new spiritual leader, Koresh renamed himself after the biblical kings David and Cyrus, representing his role as both a spiritual and temporal leader. Under Koresh's guidance, the Branch Davidians grew increasingly isolated from the outside world. He preached that he was the final prophet, and that his followers were the chosen ones destined to survive the coming apocalypse. With his powerful presence and persuasive rhetoric, Koresh was able to maintain a tight grip on the community and its members. A critical point in Koresh's story occurred when he and several of his followers were put on trial after attempting to seize control of the Branch Davidians. This power struggle, also known as the 1987 Rodenville Shootout, took place between Koresh's group and another faction led by George Roden, the then current leader of the sect. The conflict resulted in a violent gun battle, leaving several people injured and one person dead. Koresh and his followers were arrested and charged with attempted murder. However, during the trial, Koresh's defense team argued that they had acted in self-defense against Roden and his faction. The jury found it difficult to determine who had fired the first shots, and as a result, Koresh and his followers were acquitted. This legal victory further solidified Koresh's position as the leader of the Branch Davidians. Emboldened by his acquittal, Koresh continued to tighten his control over the group, leading them further down a path of isolation and ultimately setting the stage for the tragic events that would unfold. David Koresh's charismatic personality played a significant role in his control of the Branch Davidians. He was a skilled speaker, able to inspire and persuade others with his passionate sermons. Koresh often claimed to receive direct revelations from God, asserting his authority as the group's prophet. By positioning himself as the only one who could interpret the Bible's complex prophecies, he made his followers increasingly dependent on him. Koresh's manipulation extended to the personal lives of his followers. He implemented strict rules and regulations controlling every aspect of their lives, from their diet to their relationship. He preached that the end times were near, and the only way to salvation was through absolute obedience to him. This created an atmosphere of fear and devotion, making it difficult for members to question or even challenge his authority. But what exactly did the Branch Davidians believe? The Branch Davidians, a religious sect that emerged from the Seventh-day Adventist Church in the 1950s, believed in the immediate return of Jesus Christ, and the establishment of the kingdom of God on earth. The group's teachings were rooted in the interpretation of biblical prophecies, particularly those found in the books of Revelation and Daniel. Key elements of their belief system, including the importance of living a simple, communal lifestyle and adhering to strict moral codes. Their central focus was preparing for the end time, which they believed were fast approaching. They expected a series of cataclysmic events leading up to a final confrontation between the forces of good and evil. To survive the apocalypse, they believed they must remain faithful to their spiritual leader and follow his guidance in every aspect of life. Little did they know, their apocalypse was coming. Chapter 2. The Apocalypse in Waco. Koresh introduced a number of controversial teachings and practices within the Branch Davidian community. One of the most contentious was the New Light doctrine, which allowed him to take multiple wives, some as young as 12. He justified this practice by claiming it was his duty to father the House of David, a group of children who would play a vital role in the end time. Another controversial practice was Koresh's use of corporal punishment as a means of discipline. Members, including children, were subjected to physical punishment for breaking the community's strict rules. This reinforced Koresh's authority and instilled a sense of fear and obedience among his followers. The Mount Carmel Center was the primary residence and spiritual headquarters of the Branch Davidians. Located about 10 miles east of Waco, Texas, the 77-acre property housed a large central building, smaller residential structures, and various outbuildings. The main building, a 3-story complex, contained living quarters, a chapel, a gymnasium, and storage rooms. The Mount Carmel Center held great significance to the Branch Davidians, as it was believed to be the chosen location for the final confrontation between good and evil, prophesied in the Bible. Koresh and his followers viewed the compound as their sanctuary, a place where they could prepare for the end times and live according to their beliefs without interference from the outside world. Life at the Mount Carmel Center was marked by simplicity, hard work, and a strict adherence to Koresh's teachings. Members lived communally, sharing resources and responsibilities. They grew their own food, homeschooled their children, and participated in daily Bible studies led by Koresh. Living conditions at the compound were spartan, with limited access to modern amenities. Members were expected to live frugally and devote their time and energy to spiritual pursuits. Koresh's control over the community extended to regulating their diet, sleep patterns, and daily routines, further reinforcing his authority and influence. In the years leading up to the Waco Siege, allegations of illegal weapon possession began to surface. The Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, ATF, received reports that the Branch Davidians were stockpiling weapons and ammunition, including automatic rifles, grenades, and explosives. This information led the ATF to believe that the group posed a significant threat to public safety and warranted further investigation. Allegations of child abuse and polygamy within the Branch Davidian community also raised concerns. Former members and family members of those still inside the compound reported instances of physical abuse, underage marriage, and sexual misconduct involving minors. These reports fueled suspicions that the group was engaging in illegal and dangerous activities under Koresh's leadership. On February 28, 1993, the ATF launched a raid on the Mount Carmel Center to execute a search warrant for illegal weapons. As they approached the compound, the situation quickly escalated into a violent shootout between the agents and the Branch Davidians. It remains unclear who fired the first shot, and this uncertainty has fueled controversy surrounding the event. Critics have questioned the necessity of using such force, knowing that there were women and children inside the compound. The firefight lasted for nearly 2 hours, resulting in the deaths of 4 ATF agents and 6 Branch Davidians, with numerous others on both sides injured. As the ATF agents began to run low on ammunition, the Branch Davidians ceased firing, allowing the agents to retreat. This lull in the shooting allowed the ATF to regroup and call for reinforcements. As the situation unfolded, more law enforcement personnel arrived at the scene, and the news media quickly caught up to the event. Live coverage of the standoff attracted widespread attention, with viewers across the nation watching the tense situation unfold. Civilians living near the Mount Carmel Center report hearing the massive shootout and express shock and concern about the violence erupting in their community.
My name is David Koresh. I'm speaking to you from Mount Carmel Center.
Following the failed raid, the FBI took over the operation and began a 51-day standoff, attempting to negotiate a peaceful resolution. Communication between Koresh and the negotiators were sporadic. Progress was slow, and the situation remained tense. One of Koresh's key demands was to broadcast his sermons to the world, and he was granted airtime on several radio stations to share his message.
The first thing that I would like to introduce in our subject is the reasons for the revelation of Jesus Christ.
During the negotiation, Koresh released a number of hostages, but eventually stopped fulfilling his end of the bargain. This frustrated the negotiators, who sought alternative methods to pressure the Branch Davidians into surrendering. The FBI began exploring a psychological tactic such as playing loud music and disruptive sounds around the clock in an attempt to wear down the occupants of the Mount Carmel Center. Despite these efforts, the Davidians remained steadfast in their refusal to surrender. As the standoff dragged on, patience among the negotiators and law enforcement personnel began to wear thin.
Let's get back to the point at hand, this, the writing of the seals. Okay, you've got to do that from in there, and it's going to take you X amount of time. But just tell me this, David. Are you saying that when you finish that manuscript...
Then I'm not bound any longer.
No, but see, that doesn't answer the question.
Then I'll be out, yes, definitely.
I know you'll be out, but that could mean a lot of things, David. That could mean...
I'll be in custody, in the jailhouse. You can come down there and feed me bananas.
No, I know at some point in time that's true.
David, it is time to submit and surrender to the proper authority. Exit the compound now, and no one will be injured.
On April 19, 1993, the FBI initiated a final assault on the compound, using a combination of armored vehicles and tactical strategies to force the occupants out. The FBI deployed tanks to breach the walls of the compound and insert tear gas into the building in an attempt to compel the Branch Davidians to surrender. The armored vehicles also tore into the structure, creating openings for the gas to infiltrate the interior more effectively. The FBI claimed to have evidence, allegedly from wiretaps, that the Branch Davidians were preparing for the assault by putting on gas masks and pouring flammable chemicals inside the compound. This information suggested that the occupants were ready to resist the assault and potentially set the building ablaze. Later into the assault, a fire broke out, engulfing the main building. And although both sides held opposing views, they each played a role in jeopardizing the safety of the innocent. As history has shown time and again, such actions inevitably spiral into devastating consequences, dragging those involved into a nightmarish abyss, akin to the very depths of hell.
Act. Just to refresh my colleague's memory, the
Waco residents that we spoke with had ever even heard of this cult.
So you live in the dream.
The cause of the fire remains a subject of controversy, with both the FBI and the Branch Davidians accusing each other of starting it. The tragedy marked the end of the Waco Siege and left a lasting impression on the public's perception of law enforcement and the handling of standoffs involving religious groups, killing more than 70 Davidians, including David Koresh. Chapter 3. Key individuals involved. Steve Snyder was David Koresh's most trusted confidant and played a crucial role in the Waco Siege. He acted as Koresh's primary negotiator, communing with the ATF and the FBI on behalf of the Branch Davidians. Snyder's loyalty to Koresh was unwavering, even in the face of mounting pressure and danger. His dedication to Koresh would ultimately cost him his life, as he perished alongside his leader during the final moments of the siege. Wayne Martin was an accomplished Harvard-educated attorney who left his successful career behind to join the Branch Davidians. Martin played a significant role during the Waco Siege, serving as a legal advisor and strategist for the group. Despite his legal expertise, Martin was unable to prevent the tragic outcome of the standoff, and he too lost his life in the fire that engulfed the Mount Carmel Center. Perry Jones, David Koresh's father-in-law, was an early follower of Koresh and a devoted member of the Branch Davidians. Tragically, Jones was one of the first casualties of the ATF raid on February 28, 1993. His death served as a stark reminder of the high stakes involved in the Waco Siege and the potentially devastating consequences for those involved. Gary Nosner, the FBI's chief negotiator, played a pivotal role in the Waco Siege during its early stages. Nosner's approach focused on establishing a dialogue with the Branch Davidians and working towards a peaceful resolution. However, his efforts were often undermined by the aggressive tactics employed by other members of law enforcement, ultimately leading to the tragic end of the standoff. Brian Sage was an FBI negotiator who took over from Gary Nosner during the latter half of the Waco Siege. Sage continued to engage with the Branch Davidians in an attempt to find a peaceful resolution. However, as the siege wore on and tensions escalated, Sage's efforts were met with increasing resistance, and the eventual outcome of the standoff proved to be disastrous. Jim Kavanaugh, an ATF negotiator, was a constant presence throughout the Waco Siege. Kavanaugh faced the challenging task of trying to find a peaceful solution while navigating the complexities of the situation and the competing interests of various law enforcement agencies. Despite his efforts, the standoff ultimately ended in tragedy, raising questions about the tactics and decisions made by law enforcement during the siege. David Thibodeau was one of the few survivors of the Waco Siege. His first-hand account of the events leading up to and during the standoff provides a unique and valuable perspective on the tragedy. Thibodeau later authored a memoir, Waco, A Survivor's Story, which details his experience as a member of the Branch Davidians and sheds light on the complexities of the Waco Siege. Clive Doyle is another survivor of the Waco Siege, who has since become an advocate for the Branch Davidians. Tragically, Doyle's daughter perished in the fire that consumed the Mount Carmel Center. In the aftermath of the tragedy, Doyle has worked tirelessly to share his story and the stories of other Branch Davidians in an effort to challenge the mainstream narrative surrounding the events of the Waco Siege. Catherine Schroeder, a survivor of the Waco Siege, played a crucial role in the aftermath of the tragedy by testifying against the government in a civil lawsuit. Schroeder's testimony provided a unique and powerful insight into the events that unfolded at the Mount Carmel Center, as well as the tactics used by law enforcement during the siege. Her willingness to speak out against the government's actions have contributed to an ongoing debate about the appropriate use of force by law enforcement and the potential for abuse of power in high-stakes situations. Chapter 4: Controversies, Inconsistencies, and Lasting Impact. Government's use of force and military equipment. The Waco Siege raised serious questions about the government's use of force and military equipment. Critics argue that the aggressive tactics employed by the ATF and FBI may have escalated the situation, potentially leading to the tragic outcome. Negotiation tactics and psychological warfare. During the standoff, the FBI employed a variety of negotiation tactics, including playing loud noises and music to disrupt the sleep of the Branch Davidians. This use of psychological warfare has been criticized for its potential to exasperate an already tense situation and for causing unnecessary distress to the occupants. Handling of the media and information control. The government's management of the media during the Waco Siege has also been a point of contention. Some argue that controlling the flow of information may have led to misinformation and contributed to public confusion about the events. Inconsistencies in the government's reporting. Origin of the fire and responsibility. The cause of the fire that engulfed the Mount Carmel Center remains a subject of debate. Some claim that the FBI's actions during the final assault led to the fire, while others argue that the Branch Davidians intentionally set the blaze. This lack of clarity has fueled conspiracy theories and mistrust. autopsy reports and cause of death for victims. Inconsistencies in the autopsy reports have raised questions about the cause of death for many of the victims. The varying accounts of how the victims died have further fueled suspicions and skepticism regarding the government's handling of the tragedy, handling of evidence and crime scene. Critics argue that the government mishandled the Waco Siege crime scene, leading to the loss or tampering of crucial evidence. This has fueled skepticism and raised questions about the truth behind the events. Impact on public opinion and policy changes. The Waco Siege led to widespread criticism of law enforcement and government agencies, prompting demands for accountability and transparency in the handling of such situations. In response to the criticism, law enforcement agencies have reassessed their tactics and policies, focusing on crisis management and improving communication to better prevent similar tragedies in the future. The Waco Siege has had a lasting impact on the anti-government movement, with many viewing the events as an example of government overreach and abuse of power. This has further fueled mistrust and calls for reforming the relationship between citizens and the government. In the shadow of faith, power, and tragedy, the chilling story of the Waco Siege lingers like an unsolved mystery. As we delve into the controversies and unanswered questions, we're left wondering, what truly happened behind the walls of Mount Carmel? How far should the government go to protect its citizens, and at what cost? The unsettling legacy of the Waco Siege leaves us on the edge, grasping for the truth and questioning the balance between individual liberties and the power of authority.